Hello, this is Lisa Rusczyk
And Donna Murphy.
with the podcast We Are All Psychic, and today we have Christian with us for an interview. Christian, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Christian. They are all saying, I can hear them. They're all screaming it in unison. It's almost like, it reminds me of something I've just talked about recently. Can't remember what it was, though. Anyway, Donna has a question for you, Christian, right away.
I do. And it is a question that we ask all of our guests. Do you think that we're all psychic?
Not in the way people think. I don't think everybody's walking around predicting the future. I think a lot of what people call psychic is usually a combination of pattern recognition, emotional awareness, and subconscious awareness. I think that's something that's like kind of learned a little bit throughout your life, childhood and adulthood. I think there is true psychic ability, but I think a lot of what we call psychic is different from what is actually psychic and what our intuition is and such.
That's cool that you went there because most people, the first thing they just go to is, I don't like that word, and they don't explain why. And you just kind of put a definition for that word for everybody to hate or like. A definition for psychic. We've never had on this podcast. No one's ever really put it out there what their definition of psychic was. And that's cool, I think, anyway. So, like, so I've done the same research, and I found this fascinating. I've actually been digging through ChatGPT with all these different points of view with it. Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And it does show me a lot of how I'm a pattern recognizer, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't recognize my own pattern. It showed this to me, though. And I was like, wow, I have already figured out how a lot of like stuff could work other than being an energy that we can read, or somehow define it, right? I've been trying to do that. You probably have too, Donna, haven't you? Like, pin down, what is it?
Tried. Yeah, I've tried because I know that there's more than, I know that there are multiple elements or there are multiple things going on. And I just, if you want to say like when I'm reading or when I'm getting information, there's things happening on a lot of different levels. And I think of it a lot of times, especially now, I think about the fact that, I've been driving a car for, 40 some years. There's a point at which you stop thinking about process. There's muscle memory. There's so many things that happen without you having to consciously think about what each thing is that you're doing. And maybe it's not the best analogy in the world, but sometimes that's the feeling I get is there's so much going on, but I'm not parsing out, okay, that just happened or those two things just connected. And that's how I got that, what's coming out of my mouth, that I'm telling somebody or whatever, because it's happening simultaneously. It's happening on a lot of different levels. And the more comfortable you become relying on whatever those elements are, the more you don't parse it out into different pieces, what's happening when. So that's been my experience.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah. For me, it's like I can say with my tools, every one I can rationalize. I'll put it simple, real simple. I can rationalize away every tool I've ever used by me knowing some other way. Picking up on stuff, a subconscious, all this, all these ideas. We really don't know. People just in the last 100 years or so came up with subconscious and ego and stuff, right? About 150 years. So, this is all kind of very conceptual, even new ground still, but everybody's ingrained in our society. This is the way it is. But that was just 100 or so years ago that this was a concept to people, the subconscious, and people liked it. It worked. It made sense to people. Like, this is how our brains work. This is like what we're kind of doing with our podcast, trying to like show that this is happening. What is it? Or talk about it, not show, but talk about it. So where did you get this idea? Like, what made you dig for this answer and look into it and kind of check out that research?
Well, I think I would like to start off by saying any point of view that I have, I challenge every day. So, like, I have a little mantra every morning, and it's, how can I prove myself wrong? And the average person would say, like, well, why would you do that? That's so negative. And it's not negative. It's just that I want to continuously to always have an open mind and never lock myself into an idea or a belief, right? What I believe today may be different from tomorrow.
Totally.
And
I'm there too.
I think, I think a lot of the raw, potent stuff that we want to talk about are things or energies that quite literally cannot be explained through words, right? A lot of these things are things that have to be experienced to be understood. I mean, we could do a really good job at trying to explain it. But for the most part, it's my understanding that these things do have to be experienced. I mean, you could explain it to somebody, they can understand it to maybe a degree, but until they actually experience it, that's a whole nother question.
You're right.
And then to explain it with words and language is a whole nother thing as well, because, every time, everybody, I love the question, is everybody psychic? And I like my answer, but also a follow-up question, does everybody perform magic? Is everybody a witch or a warlock? And my answer is, whether you like it or not, yes, because if you can speak and you're using language and you're formulating words, you're performing magic, right? Because words are a computation of symbols, letters, and they form a magic word. And that's magic with the C, very different from a magic with a K. And you're using your breath, you're using the water vapor in your mouth, you're using the fire and the heat in your body, and you're using your whole body, which is the earth. So you're using all elements to actually project this word. And every time you speak a word, whether you're taking the word for face value or not, it's automatically doing things in your brain that you may not, really be aware of. Like, an analogy or a good example of this is like the word conspiracy theory, right? So that is a word that kind of shuts down the free thinking ability in your brain, because if you have
an immediately
idea
it says
theory,
something. Yeah, there's a context that almost everybody has for that. It's negative, right?
And it believe it or not, I mean, like, the person who coined the word was associated with the government intelligence agencies, and essentially it was designed so that if you did have an idea or a free thought, it could easily be labeled as a conspiracy theory and it wouldn't be taken seriously. It's not like back in the day prior to that word being invented and used, where you could sit down and have an intelligent conversation about any idea and any theory, and it would be taken no less serious or more serious. But now we have this word where if anybody has something that challenges the status quo, it's just conspiracy theory, labeled, done. And it's
I know,
it's basically it's a magic word to shut down. Yeah,
it is a shutdown magic word.
Good point. It is interesting, because the idea that how powerful words are, absolutely, I'm right there with you. And the fact that you brought up the example that you did makes a lot of sense, because, again, how words are used, because words do have power, and how words are used can either help us expand our exploration or shut it down. And the example that you gave is a perfect one for how to shut that down, because it's a way of, if not eliminating, minimizing questioning.
Yeah, it is minimizing questioning. It absolutely is.
It's a way to stop, like you said, a free thought, an open exploration. And I mean, how many things that we do now accept, and I'll say even at least pretty much scientifically based ideas started out as, again, simply a theory, right? A question, what if, or what about, or why does, and then if that hadn't been allowed to be explored with some amount of freedom, not all of them were, even way back, because if it challenged the status quo, if it challenged church dogma, if it, there were a lot of restrictions. There were a lot of restrictions even then. Yeah. But the idea that somebody could have just said, well, that's crazy. That's crazy talk. But I'm sure that happened. And a lot of things that maybe seemed really crazy or really far-fetched or highly unlikely based on what people accepted or knew or believed they knew at the time, if it hadn't been allowed, or if it hadn't had a chance to get free expression somewhere and be pursued, we might know it through some other avenue, but it happened the way it happened, and it's good that it did. But there's a creative process happening there too, because the idea that we manifest based on what we're able to conceptualize, and that's not always visual, often that is through the word or words that we attach to a concept.
That's how idea. I am. I'm not visual, so I don't visualize stuff. I always speak it. And it's interesting that you're talking about this, because I've always felt like saying something is like, I've always wanted to keep stuff to myself. If I said something, sometimes if like I was uncomfortable saying it, I start shaking and my throat would restrict. It's just like a physical response to not talking about it, magic stuff or psychic stuff or energy or whatever this is that's happening to me, these experiences I'm having when I was younger, like what we're talking about right now, even now. And the words is because we didn't have them. I didn't have any way to explain myself without people dismissing it outright. There was no way to. And it's just like, it's kind of wrapping back to a podcast we had recently, Donna, where somebody, we all three of us said we had that instinct not to talk about it naturally, unless it was brought up or we felt comfortable, like it was naturally coming into the conversation. I think that's kind of interesting. And it kind of makes me think about like why we are all, like, so many people working in the field, specifically of psychic reading or healing of some particular type under that umbrella of energy work. Like, why have we all felt that way? And it's like, I think it's part of it is the words, part of it could be a lot of, we've all discussed this different ways and, different times in this podcast. But I think what is interesting is that we all see it in different ways, like archetypes, for example. We all like the type of women. What, like, okay, listeners, and we're kind of transitioning here, watchers and listeners, and this is a video on Spotify and YouTube. Christian is here to teach us a little bit about something he thinks about a lot. It's about archetypes. So first, that's all I want to introduce. So do you want to take it from here? You want to tell us what you're about to tell the listeners and what you do, how you teach?
Sure. So basically, I developed my own system of taking somebody's birth information and basically getting all the information you would normally get in a card reading or an astrology reading, all from just using their birth information and making a simple calculation you could do in your head. So what we did was we made the calculator available online, and you could put your birthday in there, and it'll tell you your birth cards, your soul cards, and your numerology number. Everybody has a set of birth cards. Everybody has a set of soul cards. All of the cards are attached to astrological signs and astrological transits. And the birth cards and the soul cards that you particularly get will match your exact chart. And from that information, over doing this for years, I could be at a bar and do somebody's information just off of that. But ultimately, what we decided to do is make tarot decks with real people using the birth information, which kind of transited into making a real life application, so that I guess I should explain the tarot deck first before I talk about the application.
I got it. I had the whole thing kind of hit me and went through my head, and I was like, well, that's why I went, wow. Yes, please do. That's cool.
Okay. So the first deck I started working on it about 4 years ago, and it's still not done. And I don't want to talk too much about that deck because, as everybody knows in the tarot world, the number one most respected tarot deck is the Rider-Waite deck. And I subscribe to that, and I like that idea. However, that deck is 100 years old.
Donna uses Thoth, and I use Rider-Waite. Well, she does both. She likes a Thoth deck the most, I think, right?
I love Thoth too. Yeah.
Yeah, Thoth is really my... Yeah. Thoth is really the deck that I use. I mean, can I read with a Rider-Waite deck? Absolutely. Do I have respect for the deck? Absolutely. But is it my deck? It really isn't. Thoth is my deck. It pretty much always has been.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, my system actually uses both the Thoth system and the Rider-Waite system. So we were able to take what was good from Rider-Waite and what was good from Thoth, as well as the Kabbalah, many other things that we all kind of brought together to do this. And funny enough, since we're all saying what decks we like to read with, I like to read with Oracle of the Sun. Have you ever heard of that?
No, okay. I'll have to look at that.
It's not a traditional tarot deck. It's an Oracle deck. However, I love this deck because if the person in front of me who I'm doing a reading for more than likely is not going to understand the meaning of the Rider-Waite deck or the Thoth deck, but with the Oracle of the Sun, they can understand it, and there's a trust there where they're not just trusting what I'm saying, they're seeing it. And I've
Yeah.
had so many experiences, and I'm sure other people have had experiences where you have a reader who perhaps is giving you the wrong information, hiding information, not giving you the truth, or putting their own inputs into things. That
Unfortunately, that
happens
happens a lot.
all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to use the Oracle of the Sun because it's a no, excuse my language, bullshit deck. And,
Mhm.
it also stops people from like asking the same question twice in a different way,
Mhm.
because people love to do that.
Yeah.
But let me backpedal. So the first deck that we were trying to create, again, in the works for 4 years now, that's not coming out anytime soon. And the reason being is because we are going to essentially be the new Thoth, the new Rider Waite for our day and age, for people that are
I was
alive
thinking that's what
today.
you were getting at, modernizing
Yeah,
it. Because I've
yeah.
been
So
thinking that for a while. Someone needs to do that, modernize the tarot of some.
people have tried. A lot
They
of
did
people
it,
have
Mhm.
but
tried.
they did it in the
Yeah.
1800s with the Thoth deck, or the early 1900s, I guess. When was that made? Was it the early 1900s or late 1800s?
19, I believe.
Early
I believe it was
19.
1900.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and Rider
Yeah.
Waite was around that same time too, right? Around 1918, I
Mhm.
think, if I have a right brain there, memory. I just have that year in there for the Rider Waite for some reason.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think that these are the reigning decks for over 100 years now,
Yeah,
and
things
Yeah.
are.
nobody's been able to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's taking so long. It's costing me a tremendous amount of money, which is another reason why it's taking so long. But we're basically just we're giving our generation, our time period,
Mhm.
the 2000s, we're giving it the justice that it needs to have a tarot deck just as good, or should I say better, than Rider Waite and Thoth. So
Awesome, man.
again, 4 years, still nowhere near done. So I have this time, and I like what I do. So I started diving into, hey, let me create another deck that perhaps won't cost as much, won't take as long, and something that hasn't been done before. That's like my key things. Hasn't been done before. Um, Essentially, I guess you could say controversial, because it's definitely controversial.
Well, I mean,
Um,
this whole spirituality right now is kind of really controversial, always has been, but it's even more so sometimes now because more people know what it is and they have strong opinions without having any reason, like you were talking about to begin with, you know?
right. So I um, I realized a lot of people in my life, and mainly women, really enjoy true crime. It happens to be the number one podcast in the world is true crime. The number one
Mhm.
TV shows on TV is true crime. Everybody loves true crime. True crime, to me, not that interesting. I like the true crime from like the 90s because those TV shows were hilarious.
Mhm. I know
Like
what you're talking
the
about.
trash
I
TV.
used to
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
them
yeah,
then.
yeah.
In the
Yeah,
90s,
yeah.
that's what we had to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So so I was like, okay, I was like, that's interesting. Like I understand archetypes very well. I understand people very well. That's perhaps why I'm not so interested as much as people are today, because I think people want to understand, and they want to hear these stories. So what I went ahead and did was I had my assistant pull 200 true crime stories, criminal cases, serial killers, and give me the birth information of every single person, and then delete their names and just give me the birth information. And
Mhm.
through that, I calculated every single person's card, input it into the chart, and then sent it back to her. And I said, all right, give me the names. Then you put the names in, and then that's when I started doing the research on each card. And even with the prior project, like I knew that I had something because the coincidences and the synchronicities were out of control, like out of control. And then with this, the same thing happened. So it's like more confirmation. And it's funny. I still get a little bit of chills thinking about it too. So I'll give you some examples of what happened. We like one of the cards were Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber,
Yeah.
and he was a serial killer slash terrorist who targeted people by blowing up buildings. He's the only card in the deck that's an exploding building, the tower. Like
Mhm.
you can't make that up. You really can't make that
Mhm.
up. Um, Another one was Ted Bundy as the magician. If you Google Ted Bundy, which also the archetypal idea of the magician is exactly what Ted Bundy did in court, pretending to be his own lawyer and thinking that he could trick everybody and like fool everybody with his magic. But if you Google him in all of his court pictures, he's always in the magician position, which is like this. Yeah. So if anybody, even the listeners here, like while you're listening,
I love that.
go
That's
Google
really
it.
cool.
It's pretty crazy.
It sounds really dark but kind of like humorous, but really like deep too at the same time. You can dig into a lot of like the shadows of the archetypes, especially. That's what you're going
for. It's definitely a good deck for shadow.
It's the time we need for shadow stuff. Decks. Like we're looking at that stuff because there's a lot of shadows, put it that way. I think so anyway. In the world, a lot of illusions. We don't know what to think sometimes. There's so much to think.
So I'll give you one more, and then I'll give you a little feedback. So one more that we did was they just did a Netflix show on him. I haven't seen it. They hired like Zach Galifianakis, not Zach Efron, Jeffrey Dahmer. What we did with him was he was the lover's card, and we pulled the Freedom of Information Act court case on him, and we were able to get access to his journal. And in his journal, he actually drew the lover's card as a altar that he wanted to make for some kind of dark magic that he was trying to do, where he would recreate the lover's card with real bodies. And it was literally an exact drawing of the lover's card, which is crazy. And this kept happening over and over and over again with every single person that I blind picked through the calculation.
Yeah.
So one of the disclaimers that I would like to make is I get a lot of people who are like, oh, this deck is dark energy. This is shadow work. Like any deck could be used for shadow work. Maybe this one's better for shadow work or not.
Oh, that's pretty much what they're all for, I think. Does the deck
have dark energy?
Yes,
no. It's impossible to say because it's impossible to say
how it's used. It's a tool. You know,
a tarot deck doesn't carry energy. It's what you put into it. It's a car. It requires a key and a driver. Right. So a deck in itself is not going to carry bad energy or negative energy or dark energy. If you put that into it, sure, by all means, that's what it's going to be. But we get that a lot, especially nowadays, because the quote unquote spirituality is like it's like a trend, like a cool clothing to wear. And you get a lot of people who use that trend at face value without understanding anything. So we that's something that we do get a lot from those types.
Well, maybe they're just beginning, and they're like a lot of people are outspoken when they're just learning this stuff. I know, like I felt like I shouldn't talk about it when I first started understanding, like, okay, this imaginary person who's been with me, talking to me and teaching me all this secret stuff that I don't know what it is. Talk about it is like real. I told my husband at the time, and he listened. He took me seriously. But then I told some friends, and they took me seriously. And then when they were drinking, they'd tease me about it. And then in private, they'd ask me for a reading. So I don't know. They gave me my first tarot deck that worked for me, and that was the Osho Zen. No other ones had words on it. I used that one for 15 years before learning the Rider-Waite. And I was like, oh, there's so much more information to play with than this is wrong. And I was younger when I did it too, so I didn't have much life experience, so that made a big difference too. But it's like, I think what you guys it sounds like with that deck you're still working on, if when you'll put out when you're ready, I think that's going to be like generational, like for like good. Like our time is really kind of crazy. I think everybody says that about their time, but this one really seems a lot crazier than what we've read about. Although I think everybody says that too, but this is really crazy. Okay, just go. I just had to go there for a minute. So tell us more. Worries. What are you doing with it?
After building this deck, I don't know. I was sitting one day and I was going back on all the work that was done and put into it and whatnot. And I had subconsciously skipped over things that I wanted to look deeper into for the sake of trying to finish the deck in a timely manner. because it did take 2 years to make, unfortunately. It took a very long time. And one of those things were the patterns that I was noticing. So I went back to my notes and I went over all the patterns that I was noticing. And I realized that there's a pretty clear pattern here. And I basically designed an analytical program to take all of the data points and the data sets, and I tied it into all different pieces of information that speak to each other so that you could put in a person's date of birth and you could actually calculate the capability percentage chance of them being able to commit a crime, specifically murder. So it has an
like
89%
some majority report
accuracy
stuff.
rate. Yeah, so it's a very like what's that word, like dystopian in a way, because it's like, oh, like, what if the government uses something like this to like determine whether or not you get food stamps because they think that you could possibly be a killer, right?
Right. Seriously, there are a lot of ethical issues around that question. Yeah.
But there's things that also get tied into that as well, right? Like, how is the person raised? What are the experiences this person's had? There's a whole bunch of other things that get tied into it. However, there are people in this world that even if they had a gun in their hand and the person in front of them had a gun in their hand and that person was going to kill them, they wouldn't be able to pull the trigger. There's also people in this world that if they had a gun in their hand, another person had a gun in their hand and that person was pointing it at their loved one, they would pull the trigger. There's different types of archetypes of people that it's just the way we were made. And these are the analytical points that we use. Then there's people who really would and really do have the capability to be a serial killer for X, Y, and Z reasons. And that's all the information that we put into this application. And we tested it with private investigators and detectives. It had an 89% accuracy rate. What this did was, when a murder happened, they have 48 hours to find this suspected person. You have a laundry list of 100 people of who you think. As a detective, it's up to you to have your hunch or use your intuition to try and find this person. With this application, you basically have your hunch, you put the information in, it gives you the percentages, and then, hey, if the top 3 is one of your hunches, that's the guy you're going for. And it actually helped cut down a lot of the time in the investigative process. The problem is that our court system doesn't take this kind of thing seriously.
That's because they keep paying each other off all the time.
We've heard every answer. Like, we've heard, like,
I don't know why.
if the opposing party finds out that you used astrology or tarot to investigate this person, they're going to throw your case right out the window. We've heard everything. And it's kind of just sitting on ice right now. But
that's what they said about DNA and stuff.
Yeah.
And I wasn't right. And I was just going to say, as a tool for identification, I would say that then you would still need whoever was building the case, whether it's law enforcement or whether it's the prosecution or whatever. Then obviously you still need. You can't stop with the identification. You build a case based on evidence, right?
Yeah,
and then you bring in all of the other stuff, right? You bring in, motive, means, opportunity, physical evidence. Does the person have an alibi that's credible? Do they not? I mean, I know I understand exactly what you're saying, which is that as soon as anybody thinks that you've used tarot, astrology, anything other than, I'll say, like the hard sciences to make your case or to even identify somebody in order to make a case, they're going to default to, well, see, that's all BS. So the whole thing is BS, throw it out.
Right from the beginning where we started.
But if you didn't stop at it, if you didn't and wouldn't stop merely at, and I don't want to say merely to minimize it, as identifying and then having everything else that factually backs up.
Having it with it. Yeah. That's how they do it anyway.
To say, right, exactly. Then, it's like perfume. I mean, in a way, right? Like the FBI.
If we have DNA evidence that people have been gone to jail with false DNA results and stuff. It's happened before in prison or whatever. But most of the time, we still have a whole court case, but we can prove everything with DNA if it's there. But otherwise, it's circumstantial, which is all we've ever really had. And blood types after a while. I mean, actually more recent than ever, but more recent than not had it. But you know what I'm saying? Like we've had just in the last, I've just been blown away by the scientific stuff that like our world has done in the last, I'd say 125 years, or maybe since like Roswell, somebody said on our podcast, that's when he said it all came. Remember, were you on that podcast? Oh no, I don't think you were there for that one. He
I don't think I was, but
yeah. And he was talking about
using profiling. I mean, again, it's a tool. It's it's
a really good idea.
And a lot of people say that psychology is not truly, it's not a hard science. But the fact is, again, you can start going down the rabbit hole of quibbling about validity. On the other hand, if the validity is actually proven out in real time with real results, where yes, in fact, it did identify a person, and then there was other evidence, and it meant that that person was actually, not merely then accused of a crime, but proven to have actually committed that crime, then why go down the rabbit hole? I mean, it's great exercise, but then it shouldn't stop the process. As an analytical or a theoretical or a, bull session discussion, go down any rabbit hole you want to, but don't discount what's happening if the proof is in, as they say.
I mean, it's just like saying it's the same thing as saying a witness is like viable. If you can't say astrology isn't if a witness is, because what if the witness believes in astrology and that day they read they were going to witness a murder? I mean, let's go there, right? Like you're saying, we could argue in circles about it. But, I think it's going to work. I see so many people are talking about this. I think a good overall, like, kind of place to go here. So many people are talking about spirituality and metaphysics. And like you said, it's so common that it's generalized, which is great. When I started this podcast, it was not. And then I watched as the podcast built, like I watched in Alabama where I lived then, a little town in North Alabama, like their Books a Million, they put all the tarot up front. I remember talking about that extensively on the podcast, how just amazed I was when that happened. And it's so common now, like people like this season, we've had mostly people answer the question, do you think we're all psychic, by saying, I don't like the word psychic. And that's mainly been the theme of this season. And then last season started too. People, the answer, well, let's just talk about psychic first, not like, what is that? And most people didn't do that for like the first 4 years or so. So that's really cool. They're like they want more words. People want more definitions. They want their experience explained. And I think that's what that a lot of words are coming out. I've learned more and more and more as I've done this from other people I didn't know about yet that just have been here, and some that are just evolving in our time, like right now. You just catch on by somebody saying it, somebody else saying it. It's kind of like everything always has been, but it's in the spiritual language now. It's just like I never heard anyone reference spirit, for example, until maybe 2009. I didn't know what it was when they say I spoke with spirit. I connected with spirit, and they say that. I didn't know what that meant. And is it the Holy Spirit? I just didn't know what it meant. I figured they meant like the everything spirit or God or Holy. I just didn't know. I get it now, I think, but it's a source kind of energy is what I get. And so that was one of the things I was picking from, but I didn't know, what it was. And a lot of people were using it. And I think that's kind of what maybe you were talking about earlier with some of the newer people jumping on like a bandwagon kind of attitude. They're using the words, but they don't know what they're even trying to do with them, right? Because they don't want to think.
The words,
everywhere you go, there's people who don't want to think for themselves. It's hard to think for yourself. I didn't used to. I hated to do it. I didn't want to because I got punished for it. I'm a weirdo, That's what I was told, and by people around me or something. Like when I was growing up, I was a very strange kid. Like I was just weird, they thought. And I mean, looking back, I understand I was very different, but I didn't care. I really didn't care. I just did it by myself. I act like an animal, like a cat, or play with my toys. I was always in my imagination because it was fun in there, right? And I would act it out a lot with my toys and stuff, and little, like as I got older, I would still do it like until 10 or 11, and so I had to kind of tone that down. That was a very disappointing time, I had to kind of stop playing. I just remember that. I don't know why I'm going there, but just kind of came up. Though you were going to say something earlier. You said something. You said, I want to say this, and then I'm going to. You had said, I'm going to say this, and then I want to. And you're about to do something, like demonstrate something, is what I thought you were about to say.
Talk more about the app.
Yeah, the app.
Yeah. So ultimately, that app's on ice right now. again, it's just used. It's really honestly, it's only used is to help a detective who already has suspects because of X, Y, and Z reasons, narrow down a list of 100 to, 3 or 4 people. And I would have been probably less disappointed if it didn't have such a high accuracy rate. 89% is pretty crazy.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That is.
So hopefully I have an attorney working on it. Hopefully it can be used, because I wanted, especially with something like this, I wanted it to be used to benefit society and help people. With the Killer Cards deck, we've donated to like 6 different organizations. Every time somebody buys a deck, we make a donation to different types of organizations, mainly in the true crime space. Like people, this month we did parents of murdered children, I believe is the name of the charity. And then last month we did children of murdered parents. So 2 different charities, similar interest groups. So every month, the amount of decks that we sell, we end up donating to the charity. And I just want to circle back on some of the things that you were saying. There's a saying, a quote. I forgot who said it, but it's millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
astrologers.
It's a really big stock guy who said it, like a billionaire who said it.
So true.
So true. And it's very true.
I've had a lot of people contact me for stocks in another job I used to have, but not for astrology. They didn't. They just asked me.
my brother is in stocks, and when he was in stocks, he's not anymore. But when he had a problem whale. A whale is like a big buyer of stock, somebody who has a lot of money. And when he couldn't get the person to answer his calls or make a deal with him, he would call me. He'd give me the person's, birth information. And I would say, all right, call Steve on Friday at 6:00. He's like, oh, well, we close at 5. I was like, call him at 6:00. I'm telling you, call him at 6:00.
I love this. That's great.
It's the Venus hour, and that's when it's going to be the best time for him. He's going to be winding down, and he'll be open to
you understand it very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and he and he did that quite a few times with me, and every time he ended up making a sale. So I mean, there's so many different things. I used to frequent the casino a lot, and I used to use astrology and numerology to up the odds of whether or not I would win. And it worked out so well that they actually got rid of a couple of machines just because of me. In Atlantic City, at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. Yeah, they used to have these old machines called the pinball machines, and those older machines are easier to use astrology and numerology with than the new computer ones, because the new computer ones, they can update from minute to minute.
They realize you're doing it.
Yeah, with the older ones, so much easier. And I remember I was talking about this with my wife for like weeks. I was like, all right, I think I have the calculations down right. We're going to go on Friday at the top of Venus hour around 6:30 p.m. We'll start looking for the machines, and then we'll start gambling around 6:50 p.m. It was the last Friday of the month. There was a whole bunch of things that were important to it. I did all the calculations, and we sat down on the first machine, and on the third pull, we hit like $8,000. And then, in Atlantic City, you have to wait for them to come and bring you the money. So as we're waiting for them to give you the money, there's another machine right next to me, same machine. I went there, second pull, another 5,000. So now we're waiting for 2 machines to get a hand pay at. And then I see another machine behind me, same machine. I go to that one, and I did the same thing. I ended up hitting another 10,000 on that one. So we walked away with like around $26,000. And I could have kept going, right? But like the rational side of me was like, hey, they want to walk you out now. This is a bit much. And then we left, and I came back the next month. I did the last Friday again, same time, everything like that. When we walked into the room where they have these machines, they were gone. And so I asked the lady, I was like, what happened to the machines? They're like, oh, we got rid of those a few weeks ago. So they got rid of them like right after I had went and did that. But yeah, I mean, listen, that's just a real world story. You could use astrology, tarot, numerology for anything. It's the tools that make up kind of how everything works.
They all work together, and I've noticed that as well. I do palmistry too, and palmistry. The names of everything in palmistry, if you don't know, and listeners, watchers, is I've done a lot. I've done a few podcasts on palmistry, I think, but the astrology, everything in your palm is named after astrology stuff, pretty much, and it all wraps into the same themes as astrology names with the areas of the hand. Like it's pretty much if you know the names of astrology stuff and know where it is on your hand, you can just really intuitively just read your hand. And it's like the astrology. I've studied numerology and astrology too, and astrology is the one that's taken the longest to understand. But I kind of gotten somewhere I can do readings like that now, but I can't predict.
Are you doing Western or Vedic?
Western. Oh, I don't understand Vedic yet. I haven't gone there. I love it though. I have gotten readings from Vedic astrologers. They match up. It doesn't matter. I don't think what you study or it's just like what I understand would matter to me. You know, I don't know for sure how that's how it works, but like I've had Vedic astrologers say I'm like an Aries, and then other ones say I'm a Taurus in the Western system. I've had other Vedic astrologers say I'm a Gemini. So I don't know. They're different in the Western charts too, because we have many styles. We have tons of styles according to astro.com. like you ever go down that Dropbox, you're like, whoa, what are all these? Like it goes on and on. Like, wow, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of ideas for how to do this, and they all seem to work. Even though
I love Vedic. I think Vedic, for me, I like Western and I like Vedic. I use Western for certain things and I use Vedic for other things. Vedic is like more of a, in my opinion, it's more of a surgical approach, whereas Western is more of a digestible approach. And some of the things that I was able to help in my life with Vedic astrology, tremendous. And again, like I said earlier, I wake up every morning trying to prove myself wrong. So just because I believe in these things doesn't mean, I'm always trying to challenge it. So when I was getting into Vedic astrology, I was challenging it all day, all night, and Vedic astrology, it breaks down with even matching gemstones to the planets to help you with issues, right? So like, I have a problem with Mars, so I'm wearing red coral on my Mars finger.
I love that.
And then
I used to make metaphysical jewelry for that reason, for purposes like that.
This was that old company I was talking about, Ragnar's Rocks, as we used to do. So they have a ruby for Saturn and a pearl for the moon. And these are the appropriate fingers that they go on. And I used to wear a red coral necklace. And the reason being is I had an issue with blood. And even before I had this issue with blood, I was doing readings with a really good teacher friend of mine, and he mentioned the Mars thing, and he's like, "Oh, you got to watch out for your blood. You got to be careful with this, that, and the third." Lo and behold, I ended up getting hit with like 47 blood clots, all over my legs, my groin.
Oh my gosh!
What happened?
Lungs. No genetic. It wasn't from a vaccine because I didn't get any vaccine. It wasn't from genetics because I don't have any of the markers for it. I've been to every kind of test, every doctor you can imagine. They don't know. So my answer is it's because of Mars. But
maybe
when that happened, you don't feel those things. So it's like I had a little bit of a pain in my groin, and I thought I pulled my groin because the a few days before was the 4th of July party, and I was carrying big buckets of beer and fireworks, and I was like, I got a little drunk, and I must have not realized how heavy something was. I pulled my groin. So my wife was like, I know you're not going to. I hate going to the hospital. My wife's like, you're not going to go to the hospital, but go to the urgent care. So I went to the urgent care. They're like, I got good news and bad news. She's like, you didn't pull your groin, but it looks like you have a blood clot because your leg is like twice the size as it should be.
Wow.
So I went into the hospital. They immediately put me on a table and were like, don't effing move. And I was like, okay, because they didn't want the ones in my lungs to dislodge and go up. And, they did a little surgery to take out the biggest one, which was in my groin area. That's where I was feeling the pain. And then, a bunch of blood thinners and IV drips and stuff like that. But after that, I started wearing the red coral necklace and the red coral ring for help with that. And haven't had an issue since. And that wasn't enough to really like solidify the deal for me that it was working, because it could just be chance, right? This also happened for no reason. So it could be a one and done type of a thing. However, my dog, Courage, who I actually named my company after. So all the publishings and books
I like
and
that
tarot
name.
decks they make is published under Courage Over Comfort. And she ended up having a some kind of cyst that attaches to blood vessels and blood veins, and it ended up starting to bleed internally. So she was acting weird, brought her to the vet. Vet's like, okay, you have to put her down. She's bleeding internally. And I said, all right, I could accept that, but also I'm not putting her down here. Just she doesn't know this place. This is a cold, dirty vet office. Not happening. They're like, she's not going to make it home. I was like, I'll take my chances. I'd rather her die on the way home than die inside this vet office. And so we took her home. As we left the place, I gave her my red coral necklace. She ended up living for another 3 months. Wow. The day that she died, I didn't notice rather, and I didn't find out until 3 days after she died. I was feeling depressed and sad, so I went on the same walk that we usually go on throughout the neighborhood. And long and behold, I'm getting chills. The necklace that I gave her was broken on the floor. So one of the walks that we went on right before she died, the necklace broke and fell on the floor. Yeah. And she no longer had that Mars energy to help the red coral to help with that Mars energy. Also, going back a week after, my head was clear enough to look back, and I was making a little memorial for her. I realized she died on Mars Day, Tuesday, the one day you're supposed to wear the red coral the most. So her necklace broke on Mars Day. She died on Mars Day, and I found the red coral necklace afterwards. So that situation for me was like, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
That's what made you know something, right?
Yeah, that's not
something's up here.
Yeah, because that's not obviously that's not cool.
There's something too much here. You've been trying to connect dots for a long time, and that sounds like a big huge aha. Like a big, huge moment for you where a lot of stuff came together and you seem to have, to me, Donna, I mean, you seem to have like a really good grasp of like, the aspects of the reasons the tools work and what they are and why we use them and why you use them. Donna uses them, why I use them, I'm pointing at myself, but you seem to have like a really, like, you think a lot is what I'm getting at, but you have a lot of thought trains going. That's cool. So I imagine like these expressions, like these like experiments for you are just like, I almost feel like you do them out of like, reality is boring, so I got to make it more interesting to figure it out. Because you just seem like you've got a lot going on in here. Like you seem like you can, like, are you in Aquarius by? Are you in Aquarius by? June, that's right. June, what are you?
Gemini.
Are you Gemini then?
Gemini. Yeah, I have two minds. Yeah, so
that's what's going on. That's what I'm picking up on. I don't meet too many Gemini. My stepson was, and my mom is, but I don't. They don't seem to have that going on. But my stepson was he was 18 when I left, so I don't know. He might have developed that when he got older. But he was more the quiet and then extroverted sometimes. He'd be quiet and but like what you're doing is the thinking that way. I don't think he thought that way. I don't know if my mother does, but you definitely seem to do that two-way train. And I do that too. My Venus is in Gemini and I'm a real idealist, and my Venus is in the 11th house. So, I'm with friends, like the chatter comes out, which is what's happening right now. I feel like you're a friend. And then my dear friend, Christian, where can our listeners find you and find out about this and like learn more and like get in touch or anything?
Yeah, so the website for the current deck that we have released is killerkardstarot.com. There's also a free calculator on there. Anybody could use it. We don't charge. You just put your birth information. It gives you all kinds of calculations. You could even put your name in there, and it'll give you the planet ruling your first name, last name, and then both together. The girlies love that because they could put their suspected husband's last name in there and see what happens when it changes. We're also on TikTok, Courage Over Comfort 444, Instagram, Courage Over Comfort, Twitter. We're on everything. We have another release, tarot deck release in a few months, and then we have a big release next year The next year tarot deck is great because I did the same thing that I did with the serial killers. I'm doing with political people, presidents of different nations.
How cool is that?
Anybody who's in the political sphere or the influential sphere. We did the same thing. Blind, didn't make any preconceived judgments. Literally, whatever card they were is whatever card they were, and that comes out next year.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool, man.
That's fascinating.
Really cool. Yeah, thank you so much. And listeners and watchers, I'll put all that information he just gave you in the description of this podcast. And at this point, I guess I'd like to thank our sponsor, Everclear. Everclear is an advice app and website where you can get advice from psychics and empaths so you can get the clarity you need to create the life you deserve. And you deserve it. And lastly, thank you, Everclear, again. Just like Everclear a lot. They're really good people. I guess like at the end, we usually like to ask advice for you to give the listeners and our watchers, maybe something to chew on, and on this topic. I'm trying to think, like, I'm feeling like if there's a listener that's been listening to this and they're kind of like, well, these are all esoteric tools. I mean, how can proving esoteric tool be proof? Right? So like give it the advice to the listeners. It is like like what I'm getting at is these systems are ancient. This is something that was in your letter that I loved. That's what I wanted to get here. You said these are ancient systems. And I kind of, that's the phrase that really caught me. And I was like, or whoever wrote me, I think it was you wrote me, or when somebody wrote me this letter, it was great. And I said ancient times. I really was thinking about that, like, because we talk about this sometimes on the podcast, we brush up on it. We talk about it. What is ancient times? We don't know really how long humans have been here. And AI are scoping out the ground. Some people have talked about this on the podcast. Kind of interesting. They've been scoping out the ground, if you heard about that, and they find ancient sites all over the world. They're finding them right now. And they're older than like places we know of, or they're digging up stuff, or like there's a camel in Wisconsin or something like that, things like that in like 4,000 years ago. So they're finding out a lot of stuff that we're filling in holes for, that were a lot of assumptions made before. And already history is changing, basically, kind of, it's not really changing, but we're knowing more of what happened. And so it's interesting. We don't know where these tools come from, really, ultimately. Like they do all make sense. They do all work together for some reason, not just because that they just happen to, I think what you're pointing at with what you're finding with these systems, and this is the advice I'd like to say to the listeners as they're finding their way to their personal, what works for them, their moment where they're like, I know myself. I know I can take utter control over myself. It's kind of where we all go with this in the end. No, that's kind of thing anyway. But I think that like the advice would be whatever they come up with, make it like you did. Like how did you make this yours? Like your idea. You've made it something that everybody can like access and use and understand. And you believed in yourself and you believed in what you experienced. How would you say that to other people who are listening to this and they're just like, I don't know how to tell people what I'm experiencing. I've got some words, I want to express it. And you know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I think a lot of our history definitely isn't real, but these systems are real.
Yes,
they are something that's useful, right? The tools are there, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's you. It's the list. Anybody who's listening to this right now, it's you. You're the source. Now, these tools can be helpful, right? Just like a car gets you faster from A point to B point. But always keep an open mind. Like I said earlier, I like to wake up every morning and challenge every idea that I have. I'm not going to always cement my feet into something because you just don't know. And at the end of the day, we're all the source of the information, and the tools just help.
It's very good advice, and I agree with that. I'm like that with you. I never know. Yeah. Never will feel like I know about what is out of this thing. This thing is a trap. This is really a good container. I love it now, but when I was younger, I thought it was a trap, kind of. The body. I like it now. It's not so bad.
I don't think that being certain about something is necessarily a problem unless that certainty is shutting you down in a way that doesn't allow you to take in new information or new experience.
I like that. And that's kind of, we talked about that in the beginning.
Because there are actually things I am certain about.
Yeah.
Now,
That's a good
truth,
point.
The truth doesn't mind to be challenged.
But I wouldn't rule out with new information and or new experiences or some combination of those things. I would let that continue to be an organic and a dynamic thing, as opposed to this is written in stone and I'm locked into it in a way that shuts something down.
Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't make it go forward. Yeah, no growth.
But I don't have a problem with certainty in that framework when I can work with it in that framework. As a matter of fact, I do actually find both courage and comfort, if you don't mind me playing off you a little bit, in that. But that's because I see it still as a dynamic as opposed to a static or a dead thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man.
I'm not dead certain.
Thank you so much, guys.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
This has been a fun podcast. I've had
this is wonderful. It's been
great
really,
podcast.
really
I'm so sure. I've been had a weird time lately, Christian listeners and watchers. Regular, I am sorry. I've been crazy, but I'm back. Kind of. You're getting there. We're getting there. Do a lot of Donna's help, and you helped a lot. Thank you, Christian, with this podcast. And
thank you.
And we have one last question. Do you love our listeners and our watchers?
Of course I do.
Of course he does. He loves them. He loves them, Donna. He loves you, listeners.
Yes. And so do we.
Y'all have a nice day wherever you may be. And I'll put this out eventually and you'll see it then. And then it's right now. Peace out. Bye.
Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.